What's up, guys? This is Bull the Fell-Handed, and today we have Bull's Super Pershing Weak Spot Guide. These weak spot guides are becoming very popular since I have been on the video heroes on worldoftanksconsole.com. Moving on, I am trying to get to everyone's request. I will get there eventually. Now, I did do a weak spot guide for the Super Pershing a few months ago, but it wasn't a proper in-depth look. It was just a little bit about how to pin it. This is going to be totally in-depth and in the format you're used to. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Now, this is the frontal weak spots. A lot of people have really big issues penetrating this tank frontally. Now, at this time, I'm going to tell you that the attacking tank is a Type 59, which has 181 millimeters on average penetration with your armor-piercing round and 241 millimeters of average penetration with your APCR round. Now, I do say average because plus or minus 25% as per RNG, just to get that out there. Now, my constant viewers, if you fire at this tank and for some reason you are firing at the front of the hull, the best thing to do is shoot the machine gun port. However, you can pin the lower glacis left and right with an APCR round. You do need to have a hot round to get through there. By hot, I mean something running significant penetration. So just keep that in mind. That being said, it is so much easier to penetrate anywhere else. Now, if you look, the reticle is turning red. This is not necessarily sensing the spaced armor. If you ever notice the side of an IS-7 or the skirts of an E-100, sometimes the scope reads things a little funny. And it does that with your Super Pershing because of the spaced armor. So just keep that in mind. Now, anywhere on this tank, it's not really going, the system is not going to differentiate what is an easy target and what's not. Like right now, you're all red. So you should say, oh, well, I should be able to pin this easily. This is where a steady hand comes in, so to speak. You really have to scope this in. Now, on your turret area, this has a number of weak spots. The turret is actually easier to penetrate than the hull. The turret ring, extremely easy to penetrate. I fired at this piece right here, and this little piece of armor sticking up blocked my round. Essentially, you can fire on this tank anywhere the spaced armor isn't, and you're more or less guaranteed a penetration, unless of course you hit the extreme angle and it auto bounces, which there's not really a whole lot you can do about that. As far as no hitboxes go, the hatch on the Super Pershing's left hand side on the turret, the right one facing us, is actually a no hitbox. I know a lot of people say shoot the hatches, shoot the commander's hatch. Not that that's a commander's hatch, but you get the idea that it's a no hitbox. I tried multiple times, it doesn't register, you can't connect with it. So bully for the Super Pershing, it has a no hitbox, which is more or less gold in the World of Tanks community. Moving on, an easy place to penetrate this tank that I like to go for is the turret ring. If they're moving around and they're trying to be a little jazzy and they're trying not to get shot, which most medium tank drivers are, let's all be honest, the one thing that's not really going to move a lot is the turret ring. Now, of course, if they're uber hold down and all you can see is the gun, then yeah, shoot at some of the stuff above, you know, gunning up. But the turret ring is more or less a fairly decent shot. Of course, the accuracy has to be pretty tight, something the Type 59 is not really known for, but I'm just throwing it out there. The turret ring is an extremely viable option. once again, you know, there's nothing you can do at all with the commander's, the gunner's gun sight. There's nothing you can do with that. I don't even think I mentioned it, but I mention it now. Nothing you can do with that. The little holes and dimples in the front of the armor there, the front of the spaced armor, do nothing. Some people have asked me why the Super Pershing is so slow. Well, funny you should say that. What they did was they up-armored a tank, and that's literally all they did to it. They just slapped a bunch of armor on there, bolted it on, welded it, and that was it. And you can't up-armor something without upgrading the engine, and they didn't upgrade the engine. That's why it's so slow, and it goes slow, and it turns slow. It does everything slow. So, you know, when I mention pocket heavy, this tank is truly a pocket heavy. It's a medium tank that's been up-armored to be a heavy tank, essentially, because these things are like little mini walls. Moving on. We're going to go to angled weak spots. Now, granted, American tanks, you should not angle, period. But I'm just throwing it out there in case you are angled. This is going to be the most you can be angled before you really start to take some serious rounds. As you can see there, that's only about 11 degrees. Not a lot at all. And you know, like your Type 5 heavy weak spot guide I made, where there's a big difference, you know, 18 degrees between being angled and over angled. There's not so much on this. It's a mere 5 to 10 degrees before, boom, you're over angled. Now, that shot that I just penetrated with actually went behind the spaced armor, which, if you can get behind that spaced armor, you are in business, because this is a squishy tank. This is an extremely squishy tank that has just been made into a mobile fortress. And that being said, there are a number of inherent weaknesses that you can do and utilize on this vehicle. And as far as World of Tanks AFVs go, this is a very tough one for what it is. Of course, there's a lot of people who say if certain tanks get hull down, you know, they can be there all day. Yes, but the public doesn't necessarily know how to deal with these tanks. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get out there. That these tanks aren't the beasts everyone makes them out to be. They're very easy to penetrate. As a matter of fact, I would much rather face one of these than, say, a Type 59, because the Type 59 knows that if he shows his hull, there's a shot at pinning him. But a lot of people have issues pinning the Super P, so that makes your Super P operators kind of have an invincibility complex, because nobody can do anything to your tank. You know, if you block 2,000-3,000 a match, then you're going to think, okay, I'm going to continue to block 2,000-3,000 a match. I don't really have to really focus up. My advice to you is stay hull down. Well, you don't even really have to stay hull down. I mean, your machine gun port, but preferably stay hull down and move a lot. It's good advice for anybody. Moving on. We're going to go to over-angled weak spots. Now, guys, when you see the position of this tank and see how easily it gets pinned, there is a mere 6 degrees difference between the previous tank and this tank. Let's see what happens. Right off the bat, snuck one behind the spaced armor. Not a bad shot. But as you can see, we're decorating the side. We're tracking the vehicle as we go. I'm moving back to see if for some reason I can't pull a bounce. So far, it's not been happening. I'm not necessarily shooting at the turret that much either, because it doesn't really matter in the long run. They can be looking at you, they cannot be. If they are looking at you, then, you know, go with the weak spots above. If they're looking away from you, we'll get to that shortly. So, even me firing on the back of this tank, I am still connecting, I'm still penetrating, I'm looking for a spot where it will bounce. And aside from just a tiny no hitbox, I'm not finding anything. So far, everything is just going straight in there. It's going straight through. We're just doing solid work on this tank for a 6-degree difference. Keep that in mind. Side weak spots. I'm very methodical. I like to do everything. I like to show everybody every single tiny detail I've discovered about this tank, and this is going to be one of them. Not a lot of people would show you side weak spots, but you know what? This is just one of those situations where you need to aim, because if you just happen to hit that little wraparound turret armor, that was a kill shot, or the guy could have killed you, well, you know what? You're going to be upset. So right there, that round just totally dispersed. But as you can see, when I'm firing, wow, I should play the lottery. The point is that the spaced armor is holding. The radio equipment is not showing up on the gun either, so it's showing up as a no hitbox. But everything that I'm shooting right now, I like to start out with the iffy stuff, the stuff that should bounce rounds, and then I kind of go to the things where, you know, hey, it's definitely going to pin you. I am pinning this thing on the side in some very odd places that I probably shouldn't pin. It's essentially the opposite of the E3 weak spot video, where I was still bouncing some on the front side. This tank is really blocking nothing on the side, even where it should. You know, your gun, your mantlet, your spaced armor. So, yeah, auto lock away. So, now we're going to go ahead and go to rear weak spots. Guys, you know what? A lot of people ask me why I do this. It wouldn't be Bull by the Fell-Handed if I didn't go over every single square inch of this vehicle, modules included. I want you guys to know everything about this tank. Everything. Even the back parts. Okay, so firing on the rear of the tank. Now, if you fire on the sides of the turret here, even though they're the rear like this, you are going to pull some bounces, and that's sheerly based off nothing but angle. The armor is essentially overmatching the penetration value of your gun, and it's pulling a bounce. That is how penetration works. Now, the closer you get to the middle, the less angled the armor is, the higher penetration chance you have. That being said, if you go for the hull at this point, you'll have a much higher chance of doing some actual work on this tank, because the hull on the rear has no armor whatsoever. I mean, you know, it has enough to keep the engine in the tank, but that's about it. But turrets on American tanks are tricky no matter where you hit them. Be wary of that. That's why I always recommend going for the hull. Of course, if you can't, you should always go dead center, right where your radio equipment is. Your radio equipment is in a box dead center of the turret of the tank. So just keep that in mind. You go dead center, you have a very high chance of penetration. And of course, even the little angled part at the bottom of the tank is still an easy penetration for a very low penetrating gun, weighing it at 181 millimeters. So just keep that in mind. And, you know, if you do manage to disperse your round and hit the side of this turret, yeah, you're going to pull a bounce. So the closer you aim and the tighter you keep that reticle on what you're trying to hit, the better chances you'll have of making some things happen. And, you know, once again, go for the hull if at all possible. I mean, I understand for some reason if he's hull down, but, you know, we do what we can. So, modules is the last thing we're going to go into. The tank is a little differently set up, left versus right. I am going to include both sides just for posterity, and I'm essentially just going to drop it down into what is missing on this one side. So here on the right hand side of the tank you have your driver, obviously left hand side if you are the Super P operator, and on the other side you're going to have the radio operator. He's the one who operates the radio as well as the bow machine gun. that is the spot that, you know, when he gets taken out, nobody ever gets fixed. FYI. Moving on, turret ring, which is by far my favorite thing to shoot because it's very stable and it doesn't really move a lot. It's kind of like when you're about to punch somebody, you look at their neck to see which way their head's going to move. Yeah, that kind of thing. Cannon, yes, I'm including cannon. I am very picky about my details, so I'm putting that in there. To the left of the cannon, we have your gunner, right there where that gun sight is. And to his left sets the commander. To his left a little bit, and to the rear sets the commander. Over here on the right hand side of the turret of the tank, we have the loader. And he is surrounded by loads and loads of ammunition, of which you will see very shortly. Right there, of course, your commander, which I mentioned before. Now, we're going to go into a side view of the tank, and then I'm going to kind of break it down for you here. Here we have the driver, sitting in his little driver's seat, driving around the awesome, tough American tank. This large square here is an ammo rack. The floor of the tank is also an ammo rack. I didn't bother to put that there because unless you're firing up into it, it will never come into play. Gas tank right here. Behind the gas tank, we have engine. Lots and lots and lots and lots of engine. And pretty much the entire rear hull of this tank is nothing but engine. But that's fine. You know, I mean, most tanks are. Let's be very honest. So, as we shift into the turret, we are going immediately to the loader position. He's sitting right there, half in the hull, half not. And then at the very back of the tank, the radio. And I actually called that little bobby on the end there radio. That's actually storage. I apologize. So, starting right here, very back of the tank, radio equipment. That is also some stuff that when it gets damaged, we never fix. And the lower hull here is nothing but engine. This whole big block of stuff is nothing but engine. And it's pretty much the same thing on every tank. Typically in the back of tanks you're going to have engine, except some Germans you're going to have what's considered engine up front, even though it's technically your transmission. You know, if you drive German tanks, you're obviously used to engine fires. Getting hit in the front and having an engine fire. Yeah, it's weird. So on this side, the only thing I am going to show you is right here we have an absent ammo rack. So the ammo rack is in the left hand side of the hull on this particular vehicle. Guys, thanks for watching Bull's Super Pershing Weak Spot Guide. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it, and mainly I hope you learned how to kill this particular tank. There needs to be no reason this tank should be running roughshod and blocking 3K a game in Tier 8 matches. We need to fix this immediately. Guys, I hope you enjoyed. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you next time.